Imagine a young man who, in his early 20s, believed he had decoded the secret code of the universe. Pico della Mirandola is considered by many the father of Hermetic Kabbalah, a bold young thinker who stood against religious oppression in his time. Labeled heretical by many, censored, imprisoned, and persecuted by Pope Innocent VIII and several other authorities, including King Charles VIII of France, a controversial figure who died at only 31, under suspicious circumstances no one fully understands. A premature death wrapped in theories that still spark debate today. In this video, you will discover the story of Giovanni Pico della Mirandola, one of the greatest geniuses of the Renaissance. I am Gabriel Alexander, and you are on the Esoterica Mind portal. Subscribe to the channel. You won't regret it. When you finish this video, visit our profile and check out our other videos. We post new content every day. Drop a like and comment. Do you know Giovanni Pico della Mirandola? I put a lot of work into making this video, so please share it with friends and in groups. Your support is essential for the channel. Stay with me until the end of this story. This is not a common story like any other. Pico della Mirandola was a genius remembered by few, yet he left an eternal legacy in the history of humanity. And what if someone told you that the spark of divinity does not reside on cathedral altars, but within your own reason? That a young man, at the very dawn of the Renaissance, dared to proclaim that humankind is free to become an angel or a beast, a god, or whatever it wills, depending solely on personal choice. He was not merely a common scholar. He was Giovanni Pico della Mirandola, a brilliant soul who, at 23, sought to gather all the knowledge of the known world into a single, monumental intellectual disputation, a feat never attempted before, a cry of light in an age of dogmatic darkness. Born in 1463 into the nobility of the small commune of Mirandola in northern Italy, Pico was a child prodigy, surrounded by books from the very first breaths of childhood. His mother, a woman of spiritual strength, influenced him deeply, not with ready-made doctrines, but with the freedom to question. At 14, he was already studying canon law in Bologna, yet he quickly left clerical paths to pursue his true passion, the study of ideas. He traveled through Florence, Padua, Ferrara, and Paris, vibrant centers of Renaissance learning, and immersed himself in theology, philosophy, ancient languages, classical literature, and mathematics. He learned Latin, Greek, Hebrew, Arabic, and even Chaldean. His intellect became a bridge between worlds. Pico was not only a reclusive scholar, he was a free spirit, passionate, elegant, surrounded by artists, mystics, and humanists. He carried an almost messianic charm, and his lifestyle embodied a synthesis of spirituality and earthly delight. An intimate friend of Marsilio Ficino and Lorenzo de' Medici, he moved through the salons of Florentine elites like a prophet of a new age. Yet behind the erudition and social brilliance lived a restless spirit, a seeker of the absolute. Pico yearned to find the secret unity behind all religions and philosophies, a common language linking Plato and Moses, Hermes Trismegistus, and Christ. His most emblematic work, the Oration on the Dignity of Man, would be hailed as the manifesto of the Renaissance. With rare beauty and courage, it declares that the human being has no fixed form. We were created by God to shape ourselves. But the light that burns intensely rarely lasts long. Pico died young, at 31, under mysterious circumstances. Some say he was poisoned. Others claim his soul could no longer bear the prison of the flesh. His tomb lies beside that of Ficino, as if the two still converse about the secrets of the cosmos. And so, among parchments, forgotten codices, and the echo of ancient tongues, emerges the portrait of Iatase, man who would not accept inherited truths, a man who dared to dream of totality. This leads to an inevitable question. What exactly did Pico della Mirandola discover on his journey that so disturbed the powers of his age? Why would a young Christian aristocrat, educated in the finest models of European humanism, dive into the depths of Jewish Kabbalah, the secrets of Egyptian Hermetism, and the forbidden magical arts of antiquity. Because Giovanni Pico della Mirandola did not seek knowledge only to understand the world. He wanted to recreate it. He wanted to decipher the hidden code that unites all things from stars to souls, from archangels to words. Pico believed the universe is a mirror of hidden languages. To understand it, one must know not only Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas, but also the hermetic whispers of Hermes Trismegistus, the Sephirotic diagrams of Kabbalists, and the lost enchantments of Neoplatonic theurgy. For him, the wisdom of antiquity was not outdated. It was forgotten and needed to be reunited. Thus, he became the first Christian thinker to consciously incorporate Jewish Kabbalah into a universal philosophical project, an audacity that bordered on heresy. Pico saw in Kabbalistic teachings a mystical key to unlock the mysteries of Genesis, the angelic hierarchies, creation, and the divine language. He did not see conflict among religions. He saw layers of the same truth. In 1486, at only 23, Giovanni Pico della Mirandola accomplished what no one had dared since the days of the Library of Alexandria. He compiled 900 universal theses, a monumental synthesis of human knowledge spanning theology, philosophy, magic, alchemy, astrology, mysticism, the natural sciences, and occultism. A true ars magna, a great work of the spirit, meant to be defended in a public debate he planned to hold in Rome before scholars from across Europe. It would be a kind of hermetic council, a convocation of reason and spirit, a gathering of unifying wisdom. Pico was convinced that all truths from the Talmud to the Torah, from the Corpus Hermeticum to the Gospels, from the Zohar to Plato, did not contradict one another, but echoed fragments of a primordial eternal truth forgotten since the fall of the ancient mysteries. His 900 theses formed the most daring attempt ever recorded to restore the world's original wisdom, a unified worldview that transcends religions and cultures, aiming at what we would today call perennial theology. Among these theses, 72 were called Kabbalistic and magical conclusions, and that is where the earthquake began. In an age when simply uttering words like Sephira, Tetragrammaton, or natural magic could earn a heresy trial, Pico wrote openly that Kabbalah was the mystical key to interpreting the Gospels, and that the urgic magic, true divine magic, was a legitimate instrument for elevating the soul to God. He spoke of correspondences between Hebrew letters and the celestial bodies, of the sacred geometry of the Psalms, of the inner alchemy of the Sephirot, and of the ritual use of God's secret names. This was too much for the Roman Curia. It was as if Pico had lit a torch in the middle of a field of dogmatic gunpowder. Pope Innocent of Wyth, alarmed by the young man's audacity, immediately suspended the debate, condemned 13 theses as heretical, and ordered his arrest. The dream of a dialogue among the world's sages was crushed before it could begin. Pico fled and was hunted across Europe, captured in France by order of Charles V, and finally imprisoned. All of this at 24. While most young people were just beginning to grasp the world, Pico was challenging it in its entirety. His imprisonment, his exile, and the brutal censorship of the theses marked his life and work. Although he was later released through the intervention of Lorenzo de' Medici, his spirit would never be the same. The shock was not only political or theological, it was existential. Pico had thrown himself into the abyss of absolute truth and returned marked by the weight of human incomprehension. There began his inner transmutation. The alchemist became a philosophical martyr. The light he had revealed now burned within him. What first appears to be a setback reveals itself as an alchemical moment. In prison, Pico does not cast himself as a victim. He refines his doctrine. During this period, Lorenzo de' Medici, the Magnificent, personally intervenes to free him and brings him back to Florence, where Pico lives under his protection. He then enters the inner circle of Florentine Neoplatonism, in close contact with Marsilio Ficino, Poliziano, and other sages. Yet Pico is changed. If before his spirit leaned toward intellectual conquest, now it seeks inward recollection and spiritual purification. Between 25 and 29, Pico dedicates himself to subtle inner alchemy, absorbed in translating, contemplating, and reconciling the traditions he had studied. He dives deeply into Kabbalah and Neoplatonic theurgy, but with a new focus, less intellectual synthesis, more mystical ascesis. He writes and revises works such as Heptaplus, 1489, an esoteric commentary on the 7 days of creation in Genesis, where Pico unites Christian cosmology with Kabbalistic and Hermetic symbolism. Apologia, his defense against the Church's attacks, where he reaffirms his Christian faith while also sustaining a universal esoteric view of revelation. Letters and theological fragments revealing a man divided between the zeal of faith and the secret fire of gnosis. During this time, he grows closer to Girolamo Savonarola, a radical Dominican friar with a prophetic voice who calls for moral and spiritual reform in Florence. Here we see a crucial turn. Pico feels moved by a desire for purification of the Church and of the human soul. Yet unlike Savonarola, Pico does not condemn occult knowledge. He interiorizes it. This is the most enigmatic and debated point. Did Pico renounce magic and Kabbalah? Did he abandon his esoteric project? The deeper answer is no. It was not a renunciation, but a transmutation of the work. Pico realized that the true power of occult knowledge is not in proclaiming it to the world, but in living it as a personal initiatory journey that culminates in union with the One. He begins to write his treatise Against the Diviners, criticizing the deterministic use of astrology, without denying its spiritual value when employed as a symbolic instrument. In other words, he rejects superstition, not the arcane. He also composes a Christian rereading of Kabbalah, attempting to show that Christ is the esoteric fulfillment of Kabbalistic prophecies. This phase represents his effort to align his ideas publicly with Orthodoxy, without betraying the spirit of perennial wisdom. In November 1494, Giovanni Pico della Mirandola dies suddenly at 31. At the time, it was said he was about to become a Dominican under Savonarola's influence, but this is controversial and may have been a posthumous reconstruction. Other accounts suggest he was poisoned, perhaps by Vatican agents, perhaps by local political forces. In 2007, an Italian scientific team exhumed his remains and confirmed lethal levels of arsenic. It was not illness, it was murder. As with so many initiates who dared too much, Pico was buried beside his friend and master Angelo Poliziano in the convent of San Marco in Florence. There, among silent stones and the echo of prayers, rests one of the brightest alchemists of the human soul, not a vulgar mystic, but a supreme initiate of the Renaissance. In the centuries that followed, alchemists, occultists, and secret societies would see Pico as an initiator. His work became a reference for Renaissance magic, the Rosicrucian current, Freemasonry, Martinism, the Magi of the Golden Dawn, the esoteric thinkers of the English Renaissance such as John Dee, and far beyond. He forged an invisible bridge between worlds. In doing so, he opened the doors to a dangerous perception that spiritual knowledge belongs to no single faith. It is an underground river flowing beneath them all. What is so threatening about this? Perhaps the answer lies in the forces that tried to silence him, or perhaps it lies within us, in our own resistance to seeing the divine outside fixed forms. And what if the magic words we seek outside have always been hidden inside our own inner language? At the heart of the Renaissance, a time when Europe awoke from a millennial sleep of dogma and fear, Giovanni Pico emerges as the archetype of the universal human, a being who refuses to accept the limits imposed by narrow scholastic thought. For Pico, the human being is not a fallen creature condemned by original sin. It is a divine spark capable of choosing its own ascent or decline. In his most famous work, the Oration on the Dignity of Man, he declares, "I did not give you, O Adam, a fixed place nor a form of your own, nor a function that is uniquely yours, so that you might have and possess the place, the form, and the function you yourself desire. With these words, Pico is not merely philosophizing. He is calling the human spirit to supreme freedom. The freedom to be a creator. The freedom to craft one's own destiny. The freedom not to bow to any authority that denies the soul's essential dignity. Here lies his greatest revolution. Pico faced the immense weight of his era's theological tradition. He dared to criticize scholasticism, which had frozen Christian philosophy into rigid, repetitive formulas. He did not reject faith. He rejected the prison of the mind. And that set him on a collision course with the powers of the Church. His closeness to the controversial Friar Girolamo Savonarola in Florence adds another crucial layer. Savonarola, the apocalyptic visionary, and Pico, the rational mystic, shared the same desire: to purify spirituality from institutional corruption. Their paths diverged, and both were swallowed by history's vortex. One burned alive, the other silenced by poison. Even so, Pico's impact proved irreversible. His syncretic vision, seeking to unite all traditions under a single light, would influence the construction of modern philosophy, the Enlightenment, European esotericism, and even the early steps of what we now call religious pluralism. And now the great question confronts us with cutting force. Did we abandon Pico's vision too soon? By us be choosing a world divided between faith and reason, science and mysticism. Did we lose the golden link that could reconcile all things? What Giovanni Pico proposed was not a mere doctrine. It was a worldview, a unified gaze that sees the hidden light behind symbols, the truth concealed beneath the surfaces of religions, and the infinite grandeur of the human soul. Perhaps this is what most frightens the modern world. The idea that we are free, creative, and infinitely capable of touching the divine. In the silence of esoteric libraries, in the discreet initiations of occult orders, in modern grimoires and contemporary magical practice, the name Giovanni Pico della Mirandola echoes as a forgotten archetype, but never an absent one. It is no exaggeration to say that without Pico, modern occultism as we know it might not exist. When he crossed the boundaries between Christianity and Kabbalah, between Hermetism and Greek philosophy, he did more than study ancient wisdoms. He integrated them. He was among the first to treat the mysteries of diverse cultures as pieces of a single puzzle. This stance of approach, synthesis, and connection would, centuries later, become the very basis of Western esoteric thought. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Ordo Templi Orientis, Rosicrucianism, Fraternitas Saturni, Martinism, Telema, Ordo Draconis. All these currents drank, directly or indirectly, from the universalist source Pico dared to open in the heart of Christendom. He showed it. It is possible to read Moses through the eyes of Hermes, to understand the Gospels with the key of Kabbalah, and to practice a spirituality that does not separate, but transcends. His notion that a person can rise to the heavens through knowledge and inner magic was taken up and reworked by occultists such as Cornelius Agrippa, Giordano Bruno, Eliphas Levi, Madame Blavatsky, and Aleister Crowley. They saw in Pico not only a predecessor, but a model of the integral seeker, one who dares to know and dares to be. Many modern orders even regard him as a kind of invisible master, an archetype of the Renaissance philosopher mage, a symbol of knowledge that unites ethics, metaphysics, and spiritual practice. His writings are often studied as the foundation of Christian Kabbalah, natural magic, Neoplatonic philosophy, and theurgy, the same keys that shape the rituals and symbols of occult traditions to this day. Perhaps his greatest contribution was a gesture, the gesture of crossing the dogma, of refusing ready-made truths, of seeing magic, philosophy, and mysticism as three faces of the same coin, the search for the divine spark within and without. Pico did not write grimoires, yet he bequeathed to esotericism something even more valuable: the spirit of mystical integration. The idea that every tradition contains a veiled truth, and it is up to the seeker to decipher it, not to fight it. Today, as esoteric traditions spread, reinvent, and interconnect across the globe, we can say we are living what Pico foresaw an era of symbolic crossings, luminous syncretisms, and a spirituality that is not confined to temples, but pulses wherever there is genuine seeking. For this reason, Giovanni Pico della Mirandola is not only a historical figure, he is a living archetype of modern occultism, an ancestral link joining the magi of the past to the initiates of the present, a torch that, even after centuries, still lights the path for those who dare to cross the veil. And now, the torch is in your hands. I am Gabriel Alexander, and you are on the Esoterica Mind portal. Subscribe to the channel. You won't regret it. Drop a like and comment. Do you know Giovanni Pico della Mirandola? I put a lot of work into making this video, so please share it with friends and in groups. Your support is essential for the channel.